Please, I'm begging you. She's right there.
So beautiful.
I guess that's probably because you made it, Pyra.
Oh, Architect. Is this the world that you intended? In Indal, there are a great many paintings depicting all manner of hells.
For the sake of the world, abandon us!
How's your injuries? You're really strong. You really think I can just stand by like this?
But I think real hell might be closer to something like this.
Is this all I am?
People often say Rex doesn't change, that he starts optimistic and ends optimistic, and that means Xenoblade 2 has weak character writing. That critique sounds reasonable, but it's wrong. Not because Rex secretly undergoes some dramatic ideological reversal, but because Xenoblade 2 isn't asking the kind of questions that critique knows how to answer. Most story analysis today relies, consciously or not, on formalist thinking. We look at structure, plot escalation, dialogue, scene function. We ask what happens and how does it move the story forward. But Xenoblade 2 and Xenoblade 3 for that matter rejects that assumption, and so do many of Miyazaki's films. It's what I call perceptual endurance, the ability to keep seeing the world the same way, but with a higher resolution lens. With this, Xenoblade 2 stops looking so colorful and loud. Analyzing a work strictly through what is present in the text itself, through pacing and motifs, is one of the formalist's downfall, as it deliberately brackets out authorial intent, audience affect, psychology, and external frameworks like Friedrich Nietzsche and Sigmund Freud, making the foundation of Xeno as a franchise all the way back from Xenogears and Xenosaga. When you look at a painting, the wall's color in the background shouldn't affect your enjoyment of the painting, right? Well, not so fast. Xenoblade 2's storytelling is intrinsically resistant to that mode of critique. Not because the story lacks structure, not because it's messy or incoherent, but because its meaning doesn't emerge locally. You're not meant to fully understand scenes as they occur, you're meant to understand them after they echo. If we look at Miyazaki's award-winning film Spirited Away, a similar pushback can be levied against Chihiro, the protagonist. She was shy and fearful in the beginning and still possessing those same qualities at the end. But similar to Hayao Miyazaki, Tetsuya Takahashi isn't writing a change arc. He's writing a flat arc in which the protagonist doesn't change to fit the world. The protagonist deepens their truth until the world changes around them. Formalism loves what I refer to as the Shatter. It loves Shulk. He's the perfect protagonist for the Western media because his journey is a series of violent ideological ruptures. In Xenoblade 1, Shulk is forced to realize that his enemies are human, his god is a monster, and his revenge is ultimately hollow, explaining why he pushed back against Dunban here, defending Mumkar. We see the gears churning, we see the character break and rebuild. But character development isn't just a structural rupture in worldview. Unlike Shulk, whose journey involves having everything he believed in to be violently overturned, Rex is not meant to discover that his optimism is a false belief. This isn't about replacing innocence with cynicism or naivete with realism. It's about learning what it costs to remain open. The Hedgehog's Dilemma. They huddle for warmth but prick each other with spines. Their love tears each other apart. The intimacy now is developed by cognitive attunement and mutual understanding. You shouldn't ask, how does a scene function in isolation as a part? Ask, how does this function as a process? What came before it, and what will it recontextualize later? In fact, this same misunderstanding is often applied to Noah in Xenoblade 3. His growth is about maintaining conviction under increasing pressure, letting experience deepen perception rather than replace it, staying with contradiction, wanting to be close, and letting go without collapsing into denial or bitterness. Xenoblade 3 asks, how do you find that balance? These are not easy questions to answer, right? Rex's optimism, instead of being a false belief to be corrected, is more of a stance to be progressively tested, strained, and matured. After Rex says, she's right there, Xenoblade 2 crystallizes its central question. Can a person continue to care after realizing the cost? This is why the ending is often misread. On the surface, people say Pyra and Mythra were revived because Takahashi couldn't commit, that the game retreats into a happily ever after to avoid upsetting fans. A formalist critic would ask, was the sacrifice framed as final? Was the revival structurally prepared? Does the ending preserve narrative economy and stakes? But this is actually a misreading disguised as a literary critique. A systems thinker wouldn't care about those questions because you're asking the wrong ones. Meaning in storytelling comes from character understanding. Growth is demonstrated through choices and recognition, not structural preparation. The ending should be judged by whether it concludes a character arc or not. To explain what I mean, let's look at Rex. His growth here is letting go of Pyra, trading her life for the world. Something he would never do before, after all we've been through. How could he? I want you to look at his face as Poppy said no. She won't save Pyra because that's what she wants. But then how do we know if our protagonist Rex got the message? If he's crying right now, how did he grow throughout these 100 hours? What did he learn about the Hedgehog's dilemma? Well, right before the escape, Poppy tripped and fell, fled on her face. Rex could have said at that point, that's what you get for leaving Pyra, let's go everyone. But he didn't do that. Unlike Amalthus, he didn't let the loss, the pain, to shroud his heart. Sure, Poppy didn't help him, left her to die out there. But Rex realized how valuable letting go is throughout this entire adventure. From Vandam's death to Radamanthus, he changed. Passion, love, and the desire to protect need to be curbed. You need to actively disengage from the spines, willingly if you have to as a hedgehog, knowing when to retreat. So, no hard feelings. Here. We do this together, Poppy. Pyra, meanwhile, has been raging silently the entire ride, consumed by self-loathing over the power she wields. From the moment she asks Rex to take her to Elysium, she already knows there is no paradise waiting for them. Elysium, like the Lifehold Core, was nothing more than an illusion, a place into which the hope is projected. She wants the architect to kill her, so that the mistakes of the past can find a permanent resolution. The Endbringers should end in Mythra's estimations, but Rex challenged that assumption. He did what Adam couldn't, shown her that power, even great power, can be channeled. You just need to share that burden with others, not try to shoulder it all alone. The cliché shonen archetype, the power of friendship, is actually explored with the respect and attention that the idea itself deserves. Pyra and Mythra traded their lives for the world, especially after the architect's demise. In a world without a god, there is no administrator anymore who would force her like before. But then, why did she come back? Why choose life over death now? Because the entire game Numa wanted this. Pyra and Mythra were begging for the release of death. Unfortunately, her life as a blade was one with none of the perks. Eternity leads to bad memories to pile up. And now, when Rex gets hurt, she gets hurt. No cellular regeneration, not immune to cuts and bruises like everyone else. But alongside the salvagers, something must have happened. Something that didn't happen with Adam before. Pyra and Mythra started to love this world because he was in it. Her revival at the end was now a conscious choice, like a moth drawn to a flame. The Aegis rejected the release of death for the first time for the light of life, actively wanting to take the good with the bad. This is anything but a cop-out ending to hold the tears back. In fact, this shows Xenoblade 2's narrative engine. Despite the linear quests, escalating antagonists, and the grand rhetoric, Xenoblade 2 is not plot-driven. It's a character-driven story. Almost nothing happens because the plot demands it. Events occur because of emotional needs, trauma responses, and attachments. Remove character psychology, and Xenoblade 2 collapses. Let's rewind to the beginning. Take Pyra's decision to trust Rex, and in turn, Rex's decision to accept the call to action. Formally speaking, this looks like the hero's journey gone wrong. Rex doesn't have a choice but to agree to Pyra's conditions, to accept the call to action because he's already been stabbed by Jin. Anyone would say yes just to be revived after all. But Pyra does not choose Rex because he's destined or he just died. Or Rex doesn't take Pyra to Elysium because he wants to be revived. Pyra chooses Rex because of how he already is, in contrast to Adam. Rex reflects the old man himself back in Tora, but without the daddy flair and authority that weakens that connection. He doesn't treat Pyra as a spoiled kid. There are no judgments with Rex. He accepts her as she is. Pyra never says we have a shared destiny and you are the chosen one. She says, please, help me. With Rex, I'm sure she must have felt something different there to say those words. This reframes the narrative because if Rex were cynical, detached, selfish, or self-protective, the story would end in chapter 1. Not because Rex would refuse the revival, but because Pyra would never offer it to begin with. Many of Xenoblade 2's questions are not cleanly answered or immediately obvious because they aren't in real life. Turning all rest into Elysium is the answer. Not salvation up in the sky, but right here. You're already in paradise, you just haven't realized it yet. Mythra's reveal is not some cool twist. It's unresolved trauma resurfacing. The salvager Rex is right now repeating the same mistakes of the past. History repeats itself, but can humanity learn from its mistakes? That's why she wakes up. Similarly, everything Jin says comes from survivor's guilt, not being able to process what happened to Laura. If this world rejected her, then how could he love it? Malos is not chaos incarnate, destroying because he's evil. No, he destroys because he was taught to hate existence. Imagine it yourself, a life without a mother. At such a young age, no less, is no small thing. Malos' identity crisis starts here. It is motivated by Amalthus' past, circling a similar question. If I don't know who I am right now, do I even want to figure it out in this fucked up world? This brings us to Aptitude as a cruel social hierarchy. What gives a blade its form? It's not the crystal that resonates, but the driver. When we get to Torrigoth, we see it shown by this guy who needs to put food on the table for his little brothers, successfully rolling a blade while the other one doesn't. Why? Is this just a good guy and bad guy split? But if that was true, Allrest wouldn't be filled with mercenaries, thieves, and murderers tagging the poor blades along. What is Aptitude? Why can some people become drivers? And what happens to those who can't? How do they find meaning and connection in this world? Enter Tora, a young Nopon who suffered nosebleed for days and almost died for that dream. Poppy's creation is not just comic relief, it's compensation and longing made mechanical. As a young boy, Tora doesn't know anything. He looks at the world, women, and people a certain way, as you can probably tell. He's chipping away at the stream in his little corner of Gormati to make something of himself. He doesn't just want Poppy. He needs her to prove that he doesn't exist in a world that only values drivers. And that's why he can't help but be fascinated by Rex, the salvager who's living his dream. Dougal, Brigid, Morag, Jin, Malos, everyone we've met until now wanted the Aegis. Why? That's the question Rex understands at this point in the story. Control, fighting for limited resources. As a result, Morardain and Noraya are locked in war. This story never ends. What is power in a world where the ground beneath your feet is dying? The Titans. Eventually, there'll be nowhere left to live. Wielding the Aegis is the ultimate nuclear threat. So when Morag said how Pyra destroyed Allrest once before and will do it again, Rex assumes she's just like them. Maybe Morag doesn't want to see the world burn like Malos and Jin, but eventually, the Aegis will be used to advance the political agenda of Morardain. Despite Pyra's inability to deny Morag's accusations, Rex held his ground here. You're not taking Pyra. Which brings us to the campsite in Gormod, a quiet domestic space that serves as the emotional crucible for the entire party. As Rex wraps Pyra's wounds, we see the physical manifestations of their intertwined lives. For Nia, this scene is terrifying. She has spent her life running from the Hedgehog's dilemma. The idea that to get close enough for warmth, you must accept the certainty of being prickled by spines. When Nia asks here, how do you know Pyra isn't lying? What if she stabs you in the back? She isn't just questioning Pyra's character, she's projecting her own history of abandonment onto Rex. She's looking for the logic in his trust, and finding none. Nia doesn't stay because Elysium sounds convincing. On the contrary, she doesn't believe in Rex. She stays because, for the first time in her life, she's witnessing how betrayal is survivable. Rex proves that you can be hurt, broken, and even killed, yet still choose to remain open the next moment. He's not all talk, this kid. This salvager risked his life for you, to save you from that prison. He cared about you. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to stick around for a little while. Xenoblade 2 disguises its story beneath exuberance and anime spectacle, while emotional needs quietly dictate every turn. Everything is judged by its appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing. Critics say Rex doesn't change, but they're looking for a shatter when they should be looking for a resolution. Rex doesn't end the story as a different person, he ends it as a clearer person. He's the answer to the Hedgehog's dilemma, a boy who refuses to let the world change his heart until the world has no choice but to change around him. He is the proof that you can huddle for warmth, get prickled by the spines, and instead of pulling away in bitterness like Amalthus, you can choose to simply bleed, heal, and hold her hand anyway.
Within the inner heart, I plead for you to talk to me.
You're Rex, right?